Assalamu alaikum everybody. Welcome back to my channel Rapid Revision. Today's video is on question number 5. This is from May June 2024, paper 2, variant 1. The question here says, in 2020 the price of gold fell in Vietnam. That year Vietnam was one of Asia's best performing economies. Unlike some Asian economies, Vietnam did not experience a recession. Its total output, exports and imports are all increased. Unemployment did increase from 2% to 2.3%, but remained very low. One of the aims of fiscal policy can be to achieve full employment. Part A, identify how the effect of a fall in price of gold would be shown on a demand curve for gold. So when there is a fall in price of gold, the demand will extend. There will be an extension in the demand curve for gold, because when gold becomes cheaper, people will buy more gold. And this is also an extension in the demand curve for gold. Also, this is called movement along the demand curve. If you look at the diagram that I have made here, I've actually shown how it looks like on a diagram. That's not a requirement of the question, but I want to explain it in a better way. That is why I chose to prepare this diagram for gold. And this is basically a downward sloping demand curve. There's a price that is falling for gold, that is also leading to an extension in the quantity demanded for gold from Q to Q1. The next part here says, explain two disadvantages of a recession. Again, I tell this in every video of mine that there is key terminologies that are very important. Recession is a key terminology. So if you guys don't know what recession is, you can't write the answer. So the recession is that when the real GDP of a country falls for 2 consecutive quarters, means for 6 months the GDP keeps falling. That is basically a recession. So now I can tell you, okay, if the economy is experiencing recession, what are the disadvantages that the economy is facing? So we can say here, number one, explain point number one would be lower output, lower GDP, lower incomes, and lower living standards. So when recession, there is this GDP falling. That means that goods and services are not being produced on that level as they were produced earlier. So there will be lower output. GDP is also falling. There will be lower incomes in general, because obviously low GDP means low incomes. I told you guys also, GDP is the total income of the country. Also that means lower living standards, because if there are not enough incomes, people will not buy goods and services, will not be able to buy goods and services, or not be able to improve in their healthcare or education. The next point here can be, when output is not being produced, of course there will be high unemployment, because if output is not being produced, what will happen is that firms will not employ more people, because the demand for labor is a derived demand, which means that if there will be demand for goods and services, there will be demand for labor. If there is no demand for goods and services, which is in the case of recession, there will be no demand for labor. That means high unemployment. Higher cost of unemployment benefits. Again, why higher cost of unemployment benefits? Because obviously if there are more unemployed people, government will have to support them by giving them unemployment benefits. So that is why there will be high cost of unemployment benefits. I'll tell you again, please don't write this answer in points, because this is explain. Explain is your command word, which requires you to make paragraphs. Make paragraph for 1 point, mention a point with an explanation, also another point with an explanation, and do it in 2 paragraphs. Ideally do it in 2 paragraphs. Okay. Part C says, analyze why a country may demand more imports. So what does demanding more imports means? That we are relying more on goods and services produced by other countries. Why would any country want to demand more of imports? So the first thing that comes to my mind is that the country might not making goods and services, enough goods and services themselves, so they have to rely on imports. So they don't make enough goods themselves. The country needs to import raw material, capital goods, etc., etc. If, do you guys know, Pakistan is an economy in which we don't have a lot of, those electrical appliances or cars or, machinery. All of these things are not produced by ourselves. So that is why we need to rely more on imported machinery, imported cars, imported electrical appliances. That is why, again, the same thing, we don't make them ourselves. That is why we need to rely on imported machinery or raw materials in some cases, and then capital goods, also cars that are used by consumers, of course. Second point here, imports might be cheaper because of appreciated exchange rate. So, for example, the exchange rate of our country is appreciated. That means we will find it cheaper to buy goods from other countries. So that means imports are cheaper for us. If price of imports goes down, demand for imports goes up. So that means we'll end up buying more imports. Also, the last point, incomes generally have increased. When incomes increase, yes, people do rely on, imported goods. A lot of times, imported goods are better in quality, and they give customers better experience. That is why they buy imported goods. Purchasing power of buyers might have increased. Because of that, they will buy imported goods and services. Okay, part D here says, discuss whether or not fiscal policy can achieve full employment. Two keywords again. One keyword here is fiscal policy. So if you don't know fiscal policy, you can't answer this. The other keyword here is full employment. So I am going to explain you what fiscal policy is. So fiscal policy is a demand side policy. So what the government does is that they want to change the aggregate demand in the economy. So aggregate word means total. The total demand in the economy, the government wants to alter the total demand in the economy. So what the government will do is the government will change tax rates or change public expenditure. If tax rates go down, disposable incomes will increase. So if the income tax rate goes down, so what the employee is receiving as their disposable income will increase. That means spending should increase because of this. Now, what is important is that you guys need to know there are two types of fiscal policy. One is fiscal policy itself is a demand side policy, but there are two types in this. One is expansionary. So, expansionary fiscal policy requires governments to reduce taxes and increase public expenditure. So, this basically expansionary policies increase output and increase GDP. So hence economic growth will increase because of expansionary fiscal policy. Also employment increases. So what they mean is that the fiscal policy expansionary, basically the expansionary fiscal policy in this case, I will say yes, expansionary fiscal policy means tax rates should be reduced, disposable income will increase, demand for goods and services will increase, firms will respond to the increasing demand by producing more goods and services, so hence they'll demand more labor as well. When labor is demanded, employment will increase, so that can help us achieve full employment. Government spending on building roads, educational institutions, healthcare institutions, all of these will also require government to hire more workers. That means again employment will increase. The last point, government spending on education and training will improve workers' skills, will increase their productivity. When workers are more productive, the demand for labor increases because obviously all the firms want their labor to be productive, trained, educated. So yes, that all of these points support the argument that fiscal policy can achieve full employment. However, if there is a fiscal policy, let's say the government reduced the taxes, what will happen is incomes will increase. If incomes increase and the consumers start spending more on imported goods and services, that means the domestic demand for goods and services is not increasing, which means that again firms will not employ more labor because there's not enough demand for goods and services domestically. So because consumers are spending more on imported goods. Second point, increase government spending on unemployment benefits. So also fiscal policy is government spending, right? So if the government spends more money on unemployment benefits, let's say they are giving generous benefits to people who are unemployed, people may choose to stay unemployed. That is also called voluntary unemployment in economics. If they choose to stay unemployed, that means they prefer being unemployed and they don't prefer being employed somewhere. Okay, the next, consumer spending and investment may fall if there is lack of confidence in the economy. So lack of confidence in the economy is when there is falling prices, or that situation is called deflation. When prices are falling, consumers are also expecting that the prices will fall further, so they delay their expenditures. And when consumers are not spending money, obviously firms will not invest money in producing goods and services. That is why they cut down on their investment. So that basically means lack of confidence, and that is why consumer spending and investment may fall. If there is lack of confidence, that means unemployment will rise rather than unemployment uh, falling, and like rather than there will be unemployment will not fall, unemployment will rise in this case. So yes, that is it. Thank you so much for watching.